we're about to go really, really hard live on Facebook for the Tuesday edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. I am riding the studio seat solo today while Greg is on vacation, but I got Madison Lipson, our community managers in the house. Say hello, Madison.
Hello, everybody.
And today we are talking about crazy deals and crazy things that happens when you're trying to lock up a property, when you're trying to make a real estate investment with a guy that I am a huge, huge fan of. I call him the content monster. Met him in networking circles here a couple of years ago when we were both new from Miami, and he was starting to become this public speaker. And since then, he's become this just like content production beast with a fully produced show that rivals the Not Your Average Investor Show all day long. Bigger than life personality. He's carved out an incredible niche as the Prince of Probate and is now crushing Florida, speaking from city to city to different real estate investors in his specialty of probate. He gets to see some really crazy stuff when properties are changing hands. His name, star of the Al Nicoletti Show, Al Nicoletti. Say hello. Welcome.
Pablo, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. I love being on with you. And Madison, this is a great surprise. I love that Madison is on and we get to like connect on all these levels. And missing Greg today, I would love to see Greg. So if he's watching, shout out to Greg. Miss you, man. Hope I get to see you. But this is going to be fun with everybody. Look how many people are watching. Look at all the comments and the chats already. It's like blowing up. So let's dive in on all this crazy, wacky stuff in the title world.
All right. Slow down, wacky guy. You know, before we dive in, and we will, I like to say that if you're listening on the podcast, love having you here, would love to hear from you. And what I have to tell you is you're kind of doing it wrong. Put this on your calendar, show up live. It's as fun as it sounds. What I was talking about in the chat, it's, you know, just go to nyais.com, put it on your calendar, show up when you have time. It's really, really easy, and you're going to have a great time. For example, like when we do the roll call. You ready for the roll call? Last time you were here, you didn't hear the roll call. You ready, Al?
No, I never heard it. What's the roll call?
Let's go. Roll call time. Madison says, welcome to the Not Your Average Investor Show. Carl Thompson says, good morning, everyone from Colorado. Lee Bishop, the MVP of the Not Your Average Investor Show community, says, hello, everyone, and welcome aboard, Alan Madison. Pablo looking good. John Henning says, good afternoon, all. Dean Curry is here from Ohio. He says, good afternoon, everyone. Leslie Wilson, greetings from Denver, which, by the way, is where Greg Cohen is right now. Noah Randari says, good morning, everyone. Nadeem Shah, good morning, good afternoon, everyone from the West Coast. Rosalind, our regular Riley, says, hello, everyone from Marietta, California. We got Drew Barnhill, the ringmaster of the Not Your Average Investor Show community, says, good afternoon, Al. I have a visitor from Germantown, Maryland, who's watching the show with me. Well, welcome, visitor. Chris Gonzaga from Hudson Valley, New York, says hello. Greg Stone saying happy Tuesday from New Jersey. Ken Moline, the patriarch of the Not Your Average Investor Show First Family, is in the house from California saying good morning, everyone. Who else we got? Joanna Batista says hello. Hi, JWB family. Have I missed anybody? Scrolling through the roll call. All right, I think we were ready to kick the. Oh, we got Jen Filson, fairy godmother of the Not Your Average Investor Show community. She says, hey, JWB family, what's up? And Peter James from the esteemed Commonwealth of Virginia is saying hello. Big shout out, GC and Pablo. You were both fantabulous. Thank you. Thank you, the esteemed Peter James. We've got Greg Stone saying, I still have some of the Gregness, because we got Greg Stone in the house. You're right, Greg. Good call. We got Bill Shields saying, I missed Bill Shields' initial check-in. He normally says, buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Oh, no, what he's saying, feliz martes, mis amigos. Bill, thank you, Bill Shields. I had to find it. I knew that your first his Latin Spanish words weren't the one. Oh, man, we got Medj Garcia saying hello, everyone. All right, we're cutting it. That's it. Roll call. Al, that has progressed since last time you were here. I was a star before we started doing this. And what do you think?
I thought it was great. I mean, you were rolling off so many things, and specifically with people that are regulars on the show. So like you're nailing this.
We're a community, man. These are my friends. They show up here every week. I know where they're from. Like everybody, you know, like this is why you show up from the podcast to the live show. Get a nickname. Get yourself a nickname. If you contribute enough, you'll get a nickname on the show. Al,
Pablo,
what do you do?
You know what? I am an educator. I am an attorney. I am a podcast host. I am a whole bunch of things, a marketer that I've been able to really tap into in the last 3 years, man. Since coming out of school and being where I am now and fast forwarding through all the speaking and all the engagements I've been to, it's crazy where I really found my role, like where I'm really meant to be. And being on that platform, being in the speaking stages and the speaking circuits, and loving it, love educating people on the things that I find in the law firm, and being the problem solver to a lot of these deals has been unbelievable. So I find the solutions, there's problems, let's figure out how we get these things done, and let's talk about it.
I love that, man. I love that. And you've carved out this niche. I honestly, before meeting you, I knew what the word probate was, but I didn't really know what it meant. And right now I still don't really know what you want to explain what probate is and the probate process, and this niche and why it's so valuable to real estate investors before we start diving into some stories.
So it's crazy that we talk about this, right? So when I've been going around explaining about these topics and educating people on what is, the why is, the how is, I never had a story for the what is. And recently, a couple of weeks ago, I had a story that plugged right into the what is, and it actually solved the deal. So, this kind of segues perfectly into, Pablo, see, a lot's changed on my end too. It's not just slides of the what, the why, the how. Like, there are now stories behind all of these things that's helping the application of getting into that niche. So if we start with the basics of the what is, so what is probate? Somebody owned real estate, and we'll stick with real estate. We can get into so many other things with bank accounts and IRAs and all that stuff, but somebody owned the real estate and titles in their name. The title to the property is in their name on the deed. They own it, they die, and now for the heirs, whoever they are, through the will, no will, whoever the heirs are, for them to get title to that property, we have to go through a court process, probate, filing paperwork, moving that title over to their names so that they can sell it. They can quit claim it off. They can refinance. They can do whatever they want with the property. They can transfer it out. But now that they have title to it, they can do what they need to do to get that thing sold, so that if there's a buyer, they can get that title insurance through the title company, boom, sell it, right? So here's the application of the what, right? So you'll say, oh, that's great, like the what. The application is this. So a lot of people, they'll skip over that and they'll move on to the leads and the deals. The what is actually important for leads and deals, because in this story, there was an investor found a lead in South Florida. Lady had to reached out to me. She said they had to go through probate. I analyzed the whole deal. That's one of the specialties things that I've been able to do, Pablo, is solving puzzles quickly, right? When you're able to solve a puzzle, people love that. So I heard the whole puzzle. And when I heard that puzzle, I said, okay, we broke it down. There was two probates. I was like, this is possible to do. I don't see any problems here. And I said, we got to move forward. You got to get me this, this, and this. She was all good. And I said, all right, let me know when you get it and we'll move from there. And she said, whoa. One thing. What is probate? Every time I ask an investor or a realtor, all they tell me to do is just sign. And the way she said it was that she was frustrated, right? Sign. And I said, okay. She goes, if somebody can tell me what it is, I'll move forward on the deal. I said, really? And I was like, of anybody, you're asking me what probate is? I'm like, this is perfect. I said, if I tell you what it is, are we ready to move forward? She says, absolutely. Because she said she felt like an ostrich with her head in the sand. And that every time they told her to sign, she just went away. She passed off the deal and said, I'm not dealing with this today. So I literally told her that same explanation I just went through. And I said it. I said, it's moving that title over. Now that it's over, we can sell it. You can sell it. You can do what you want with it. She's like, that's it? That's it? I said, yeah. She goes, why couldn't anybody tell me that? And she said, we're moving forward. Let's get the deal done, in and out. So now she's sending all the paperwork over, and she went with those investors. So just when you think like a what is so boring in the world of what we do, actually plays a role in people's like psychology. Like that, and that's something I've been really drawing out, is like not just the fact that it's a lead. Yeah, you're gonna love this, Paulo. You're thinking. So it's not that it's just a lead. It's not just, oh, do the whole checklist, spouse, kids, grandkids, will. It's actually like, why did you go to that investor? What made you respond to that marketing material? What made you respond to that the phone call? Why did you only go with them? What kind of lead was this? And it's really pulling out seeing through the lens of the seller and pulling it out of their mind, so we understand that better in our real estate world. And it's a work in progress. It's a lot of work, but I actually find it interesting because I want to know, why did you go with them? And now you're calling me. This is great. Let's do the probates. Let's do the crazy title wacky stuff. But why?
That's awesome, man. So you have this innate ability that you're a great communicator, but you harness that ability by seeking the feedback of those who serve you. And as you continue to get that feedback, you weave it into stories that help them understand. And then that's why you've gone from lawyer to like beast marketer, content creator. I think it's really cool. We got our first question already in the house. Chris Gonzaga asks, so does a trust eliminate you from probate?
Okay, so that's a great question. The trusts avoid probate. So there's multiple scenarios here, right? You create a trust, right? And you title the property in the name of that trust. So on the deed, it says the trust. It usually avoids probate. However, what happens when the trust doesn't name multiple successor trustees, or doesn't have the correct beneficiary distributions, or it's missing stuff? Like I saw one 2 years ago where a big time estate planning lawyer died, and there was his trust, and he was missing like 3 massive paragraphs because maybe somebody deleted the paragraphs. And guess what? It caused a huge issue. It didn't have to go through probate, but it still had to go back through court. So trusts avoid that probate, but there's also something where if it's not complete or doesn't outline the exact distributions or name successor parties, you may have to go back to court to deal with that, right? But here's the other thing that comes up that's happened frequently. A lot of people think that just because you do a trust, you're out. So Pablo, you created a trust. You went to that lawyer. I got my trust. We're good to go. Property's still in my name. I'm ready to rock and roll. People think that that's good enough and they avoid probate. What step didn't you just take? You didn't take the act of getting a deed out from your name into the trust. And here's a second thing. Even if you didn't do that, there's not a way. You don't have a will. You didn't say anything about a will. You went, you did the trust. I got the trust. There's something called a pour over will. And a pour over will is a mechanism where you can name the trust as the beneficiary. And it's almost like a fail safe. Anything you did not title in the name of the trust pours back into the trust through the will, but you still have to go through probate, even though you have that will. So a lot of people don't know, hey, I titled I got the trust, but I didn't title the property in the trust. We got to go through probate. People are amazed by that.
Okay, I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose. I'm going to ask a couple more questions. I want to encourage our audience. I want to encourage our community to ask. You got Al here. Al, I get the sense that most of your work is done for active investors, and there's a bunch of active investors here in the chat. Oh, you're saying no. Al,
no, yes.
What are good questions to ask you these days? Why don't you give everybody some guidance, and then I'm going to dive into like everything that I just did not understand because I'm not a very educated investor. But tell everybody, give people some ideas of what kind of things to ask you so that they can guide this conversation the best way possible.
Yeah, well, let's back up a second. I absolutely love working with active investors. And it doesn't matter. People are working from other states now. If you're in Denver and California and Ohio and you're doing deals in Florida, absolutely. And there's those things that come up in Florida. So I deal with active investors all the time. Realtors, active investors, other people that are doing those kinds of deals. Hey, you can find probate with mortgage lenders because they can't get a mortgage policy or the underwriting through until probate's done. So that's really big out there. But I would say the biggest questions that I'm able to answer, I really want to get into today is all about the title stuff that comes up in deals, whether it's the wholesaler that's getting you the property, or maybe you're going direct to seller, right? Or you're coming up with strategies because you know how hot the market is. What are some interesting strategies that you may come up with that you may be able to capitalize on those deals? So we'll gear away from the estate planning part. But I think it's overcoming the title challenges you find in your deals or your associates find in the deals that's stopping you from acquiring the asset you want.
Got it. Okay. So you've defined that well. I'm going to go into some of these. I'm going to ask questions as they come. Well, let me just pick at the first one just to clear up some stuff for me real quick. That first story you told, you said that she had 2 probates. What does that mean? That means that property was like deeded or was supposed to go to 2 people that now that wasn't going to, and she had to like relinquish that control to then send it over to somebody else?
So on title was mom. So on the deed, 100% was mom. And when mom died, she had 2 kids. And so first probate is moving it from mom to the 2 kids. Then the second part is because brother died. And because brother had no spouse, no kids, no parents, and all parents were deceased already, and there was only one sister, we had to move the asset from what brother inherited from mom over to sister. So that was probate number 2. It's ping, ping, done. Right. So it's a process, and there's so many.
And you were talking to sister.
Yeah, sister. Exactly.
Okay. Who was looking to sell the deal to somebody else?
Right. To a new buyer.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So we have to go through that process because, and I see Jennifer says so many connected dots. That's kind of what it ends up being. That's the puzzle, right? We're trying to find the chain, find the link to get to the end result, to see at that point where it goes, right? So in that circumstance, we have to go through those processes, because when that buyer goes under contract with that lady, they're going to take that contract, they're going to bring it to the title company. The title company is going to review all the deeds, going to review all the recorded documents. And in that title commitment, they're going to come back and say, okay, you got to do 2 probates or 1 probate until you get the second one done. Once you get both of them done, we'll issue title insurance and sell that property.
Got it. All right. That made a lot of sense for me, man. That did, as Jen says, so many connected dots. So yeah. Jillian Noel says, Jillian, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here. She's got a question. I don't know if this is up your expertise, but do you need to place your rental properties into an LLC first? Do you have an answer to that?
We won't get into that on the show, because one of the things that we're going to really get into is the title world, on the acquisition side. This is one of the things that Pablo and I definitely wanted to cover on the show, which was overcoming these things that you see. And again, it may not be what you're seeing. It may be what a partner's seeing or another associate seeing when they come across these deals. So, and we can dive in any of those stories that, Pablo, I can tell you something crazy a lot of people are going to be mind blown about. So there was a piece of property in the Panhandle, and the title of the property was in 3 people's names. So the investor found the property. I don't know if it was cold call, direct mail, found the property, and one guy was alive and the 2 other people were deceased. So initially he's thinking, oh yeah, I've seen Al, I've seen all the stuff and all the videos. It's probate. It's 2 of them. We got to do probate, like figure out the numbers. So he finds the heirs, he starts talking to them, and they initially they were receptive, but then they became kind of cold and they just didn't answer the phone. But he still liked the deal. He still liked that opportunity. So he talked to the guy that was alive, that 1/3 owner. He talked to him and said, hey, let me ask you something. What if I buy your 1/3 interest out? The guy's like, what do you mean? He goes, I'll pay you such and such money, and I'll get a deed from you, so I have a 1/3 interest. And the property was going up for tax auction pretty soon, and they wanted to figure out what the options were. So they came to terms. The investor bought out the 1/3 interest for $800, and the ARV on that property, there was some kind of tear down issue, but it had potential of like $40,000 in the deal. So he actually did a transaction, paid $800, got a 1/3 interest on that property. Investor owns 1/3, estates are on the other. He says, you know what? We got two options here. We either force the sale of that property to an auction and try to collect our money later, or the second one, which was so brilliant, it was creative. I've heard about it before, but never seen it like to this extent. He let the property go to tax deed auction. So he held his 800, let the property go to auction, and the auction went for like $36,000. So he paid $800 for a 1/3 interest, made about $11,000 off that at the auction. Where do you get those kinds of returns on a creative strategy on how you can make some money like that in this world?
Yeah, that's crazy. That's amazing. Yeah,
Crazy.
800 to $11,000. That's that'll do. That's like, yeah. All right. Great story. First of all, I can't wait to hear more of these. This is what I'm here for. To go back to Jillian, I know that you're new here and I want you to get some value. I just want to reframe it and maybe you can answer this. You don't necessarily need to get an LLC in order to avoid probate, right? Like those are two completely different things.
Yeah, if you put the property in an LLC, well, you could run into a probate scenario with an LLC. So saw a case about 3 months ago, and the guy owned like 15 rental properties, and he had all of the properties still titled in his LLC, still like all of them, one LLC. He dies. He's got no other members, no other registered agents, no other authorized members. I don't even think they found the operating agreement. And there was nobody else, just single member LLC. And my thinking was like, oh, okay, voids probate, right? No. In order to get that asset, that asset that he owned out of that LLC through his name, they had to go through probate on all 15 properties.
Oh, wow.
One probate, but they were able to do something where they were able to move it over.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. All right. So two mutually exclusive things. And Jillian, what I'll tell you is I'm not the expert on real estate. Normally my co-host, Greg Cohen, who's the founder of JWB, is here and he can answer basically everything. Al's specialty is something else and he can give you great stories around it. Normally when people ask the LLC question, there's a couple different motivations. One is most of the time it's like asset protection and like liability. And Greg's normal response is it really depends on kind of like your situation, but normally you can get the protection that you need just by getting insurance. Until you get to a certain level of portfolio, then the LLC really starts making a lot of sense. But I've heard him a lot of times give the advice that's just like, if you're acquiring your first property or whatever, like you don't really have to worry about going through all the LLC stuff. As long as you're properly insured, it provides the same amount of protection. I hope that that's valuable. And I hope that you continue to join us. Greg's out all week, but he'll be back next week. So let's go on to some more questions over here. Noah Randari asks, does probate apply only to properties or also bank accounts?
Oh yeah, it can apply to bank accounts. So the idea is if somebody had a bank account, but they did not have like a payable on death beneficiary, and there's just nothing there, and they own that asset, that bank account in their name only. There's nobody as a joint account or anything that can become a probate asset. Where what a lot of people do is they'll put somebody else as a joint owner, or they'll put a payable on death beneficiary. And when that person dies, all that heir has to do, if they're a beneficiary, is turn in the death certificate, and the bank will move that asset over and or pay out on the asset. So yeah, that if you have it that way, it can avoid probate. But what happens, a lot of people don't think about these things, right? It's crazy. Like I don't do estate planning. I don't do the estate planning in my law firm, but I see enough on my side of it with the probates. Then I'm like, nope, not that. Nope, not this. That's what went wrong, because on our end, we're like fixing the issue. Like we see that the distribution issue was wrong, or the will wasn't properly executed. People are like, oh, you mean you can't just sign it and notarize it? It's like, No, like you can't just do that, you know? I mean, there's cute things that we've learned through working with deals. Like, you know, we'll see, this is just an example. It's like, we'll see where somebody did probate in Puerto Rico. And, you know, Puerto Rico's got some real lax signature requirements. They'll just have the person sign the will. Maybe they'll have like a notary there, and that doesn't fly in Florida. But let's just say they went through probate in Puerto Rico and the will got admitted, everything got in. There's weird things where that will could actually apply in Florida too. So, you know, talk about some of the things that we see on a daily basis. That's not really the fun stuff. The fun stuff is like, I'll tell you this story because I'm so proud of this one. You're gonna love it, Pablo.
Yeah. Give me the fun stuff.
This was the fun one. So investor found a deal, and mom dies or 6 kids. So he knew what was going on. He took the step of trying to get the 6 kids locked up on contract. So he got 5 of them on contract. He goes to the number 6th one and says, hey, you know, here's the deal. You know, you'll get your 6th distribution. You know, do you want to sign? So he sends him the DocuSign. Guy doesn't want to sign. Calls him. Guy doesn't want to sign. Doesn't want to sign. Like, it's not that he was even ignoring him. He doesn't even want to sign. So the investor calls me and he's like, Al, here's the story. I got 5 out of 6. What do you think? And at the time, I'm like, you know, you got to have everybody, you know, and I was taking notes, but like I noticed later that some of the things in my notes were not the usual things that I had in there. I think it's because I needed to know more about what was going on. So I said, let's see a little bit more later. We'll come back. I'm sitting at home on the weekend going through my files, and I go back to this file and I look at the notes and I'm like, I didn't put anything about homestead. And if you know anything about homestead in Florida, title would move to all heirs. I mean, you're going to need that number 6 or you got a crazy situation. But I didn't put that. So I said, let me get back on the phone with the client, the seller, and see if I can get some info. So I asked her if that's where the mom lived and resided. And that played a huge role. And she said, oh no, I can get affidavits from my sister, my other sister, and I'll get all of them to say that this is not where mom lived and resided, because it wasn't. And I said, okay, I have a way to get around number 6. I said, if you're telling me you can do that, I have a way around number 6. She said, go for it. I said, tell number 6 and call him today and tell him we do not need him to get this deal done. We can get solely around him. He'll get a share, but we'll get around him. No problem. She goes, I can do that. I said, go for it. Go tell him that we're going to get this deal done. She calls the guy. The very next day, the investor calls me and says, that's so weird. Number 6 signed my DocuSign contract. We're ready to rock and roll on the deal. And you know what? The deal's about to go to closing. We got that probate done in like 3 weeks, and boom. And you know what I call that story, Pablo?
What do you call it?
I call it checkmate, because we had that guy pinned. He had no choice but where to go. It was insane. And I loved it. I love that story because that's called thinking. It's called critical thinking in deals that a lot of people aren't getting into. They're not being creatively minded when it comes to that.
Dude, I love that. I love that you name your stories and that you've got
yeah.
this like building repertoire. I was just saying in the chat here that I'm like, this is you 24/7. You're just always like storytelling and thinking and solving problems and thinking of better hook points. I love hanging out with you, man. All right, so let's keep rolling here. We got some more questions. Oh, real quick. Leslie from Denver asked, she was a little confused about that first that tax story. How did the investor get a piece of the tax sale proceeds? Doesn't that money just go to pay the back taxes?
No, because they have to wait 120 days to go try to collect that money, because there may be other mortgages or other lien holders on that property. But when that property goes up for tax deed auction, the county considers all the back taxes, title searches, and all the costs as the minimum bid. So when that tax deed goes up for auction, they're getting their money back. The county's going to make sure they get their money on the taxes. It's the net seller proceeds that they got, that 36,000. Yeah. So that gets divided in thirds, and that money technically goes in the court registry, and that investor is going to have to make an application to go apply to go get that money. So, I mean, yeah, it's a process, but how fast did that go?
Interesting. Well, I mean, 800 to 11,000 bucks is not bad at all,
Yeah.
man. All right.
Yeah.
So Nadeem Shah's got a question. He says, if I have a property in probate, what needs to be done if I want to sell that property?
Okay. So if you want to sell that property, first thing is you would go to the lawyer. And what state is she in? Let's ask what state.
Nadeem is in Oregon.
Okay. So you would first go to an attorney over there to find out what the probate
Or
process is.
Washington. Washington, sorry.
Washington.
Was
So
away.
not that far. It's right there.
Yeah.
So you'd first go to an attorney to see what that probate process is like. Because if I tell you what it's like in Florida, it can be a lot faster than it is in any other states. When you go to states like California, Washington, Seattle, they may all have similar rules and similar ways that probate's done. It may be longer. It may take longer, but what you want to do is talk to somebody over there that understands probate and real estate. That's not just doing probate. So something I've learned, Pablo, that they'll appreciate this too. Whenever I approach a probate deal, I don't think about it as just the probate. I think about it as how does the deal get closed? If you're thinking about it as the end in sight, you're now thinking of the start, the middle, the end, and closing on that deal. And now you're critically thinking how that property gets sold. So if you're in that state, you want to work with an attorney that doesn't just do probate, that deals with a lot of real estate transactions, maybe a title attorney that does probate, but somebody that's not just working on the asset side of like bank accounts and probate litigation. Somebody that's really getting in real estate is going to be key.
Got it. All right, cool. I like that. I like that idea of, it's funny, man. One of the things that has made it really seamless for me to kind of like get into this world and add a little bit of value is just the cross contextualization of kind of like business principles and real estate principles. It's all kind of everything follows the same thing. The start with the end in mind and reverse engineer as a strategy is always way better than like, oh, this path is going to lead somewhere interesting. All of a sudden you're walking around in circles for a lot of time, as opposed to like, I'm trying to get here. And that way I'm always able to kind of like chart to it, even though you got to take sides and goes. And it's interesting that you're seeing that really happen, and the body of work that you're doing, you're recognizing the same kind of like pattern recognition from that side as well. I think it's really cool. Good advice.
Yeah, it's thinking through things on a deeper level.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're not in this niche or you're not doing these kinds of things, you may not see it from this level. And I'm just seeing things that pop up. Like there was another deal. I got them. This one you're gonna like, because I call it the no air German. So there was an investor, and Pablo, think about
hold
that.
Hold on. You call this one the no air German. All right, continue. Give
All
me
right,
names,
there we go.
and then I want to do like hype man intros before you start these, if you have names for them. So this is the no air German. Go ahead.
Okay, you got it. So think about that house where you grew up, in that neighborhood that everybody saw, that was dilapidated, that everybody saw it. If nobody lived there, everybody looked at it, pointed at it, said something's wrong with that house. That house in that neighborhood where you grew up, right? Well, same thing for this investor. He's living in this area, and every day he's going to work, he drives by this one house, and it's all boarded up. There's nobody inside. I mean, it's like what they call driving for dollars, right? But I mean, there's nobody inside, and you're like, what's going on here? Grass is tall. He does some research, comes to find out that the person that owned the property died. And so he's like, oh, ow, we're going out. What's happening with this one? So he did some skip tracing, found nobody. So he's like, ow, where do we go next? So I said, all right, if you want to try to find somebody, sometimes death certificates, they'll name the next person that's like a next of kin. Like they'll name somebody there with an address that you could potentially contact. So they found the death certificate. They did a full skip, found nobody. So he's like, where do we go next? I said, you need to get a genealogist. He was like, a genie what? A genealogist. It's like, what's a genealogist? Like a guy that's profession is surrounded on finding people in a family tree, performing a full skip trace of the tree. He goes, I didn't even know they existed. Said, yep, call this guy. He's like the number one in the planet. And really,
How'd you figure that out? Like, how'd you come up with that?
Pablo, this is called being in this niche like all the time, man. Like when you get stumped on these things, what's your brain doing when you get stumped on a problem?
You're just consciously solving for it, right?
You're just constantly getting around it, go around. And it's like, who's this? Who's that? You always ask questions. But here's the thing, we come across so many hypotheticals, we never know if we're ever gonna need that. So you keep it in the back pocket. So I told him, I said, you got to go talk to Alvy, get with Alvy. He's the number one in the world. So he reaches out to Alvy. Alvy's all excited, he's like ready to go, got the death certificate. So Alvy does a whole search for this lady that owned the property. No heirs, 0. So investors thinking, okay, well, what do you do with the no heir property? Like can you actually like get that thing done and sold? And I'm thinking, well, there's a theory. We won't get there yet. We won't talk about that right now. But I said, you got to keep going with Alvy. So Alvy said, oh, by the way, you got no heirs from her, but she had a husband that predeceased her. So you got to go down his line. And we were like, oh, we got to go down his line now. So we go down his line. Come to find out, he had 4 brothers and sisters that died before him, and they had 5 nieces and nephews. They're all alive. So investors like, what do I do? I'm like, call them, reach out, direct mail, cold call, do whatever. He goes, really? Yeah, go for it. He found one of them that led to 2 more of the heirs. Eventually, he found all 5 of the heirs. They were all scattered around. And this is where the plot thickened, because, you're thinking, hey, found a property, you may be inheriting, get all up under contract. And let's do the deal. Well, come to find out, 2 of them didn't like the 3 of them. There was like a war against all of them. All of a sudden, then they all started hating each other. And so the investor's like, what do we do? Pablo, let me tell you, I thought of so many strategies about how to get around that thing. I was like, there was a guy that bought a deed for $800. Why don't you buy one out, then you buy the second one out and start squeezing out all the 5, or maybe you get all on contract. There were so many ways that deal could have gone. But when we did that, that's where that plan A, plan B, plan C, like that creative side came in on a deal that nobody was solving. Nobody was coming up with, nobody was able to figure out how to get around it. And nobody was touching that. Who else was going after that? Those 5 were never contacted by anybody before. So when I tell you that we seen things like the no heir German, we see them a lot, and I write them down. That's the content brain in me too. You know that.
Yeah. I can tell the content brain working with writing down creative solutions and giving it titles, right? Like framing it, naming it, claiming it, making the story out of it. I love it. That was the no heir German.
I love it.
All right, Al. The other thing I'm thinking about is, all right, I'm gonna pontificate on this later if we run out of questions. Greg Stone has a question. I don't know if this is up your alley, Al, but he says, how will blockchain ledgers change or impact any of this? If so, who are the big players in blockchain ledgers? I know you don't know that. And will it impact title and title insurance? Do you have any insight? Have you done any reading on like blockchain, what's coming down with all that?
No, but the only thing I heard at like a conference not too long ago, and I don't know how accurate, or I can't speak to the accuracy of what's going to happen, but they were talking about like blockchain and title, and how eventually, when you do title, it'll all be on that blockchain. And when that property sells, something about like maybe that former owner even gets a royalty off the transaction, some crazy stuff like that. And they said when title gets to that point of the blockchain, doing all the title work should be easy because everything's recorded, everything's jotted down, so everybody will know the history of what's happened in the blockchain. So I don't know where things are going with that. I've heard a few rumors, but it's like, people will talk about it, but are we even there yet? Like, are we? I don't know. Maybe we are.
I don't know, man. I think about it. I remember I had come back from like a blockchain conference, like early 2021, and me and you got on a call. It's like, yeah, and title's going to mess up blockchain. You're like, what? And we started kind of talking about it. I think that it's just a different vessel for the contract, but it's still going to be garbage in, garbage out, right? Like at the end of the day, from the stories you're telling me, if people are out there making trusts and doing all these legal things and probate still comes into play, I have to assume that there's a large contingency of human error in the execution of how you set this stuff up. That blockchain, even though now it's automatically going to be recorded, doesn't mean it's not going to get recorded wrong. Ergo, the actual probate piece of like figuring out whose piece of pie is what's is probably still going to need a creative problem solver like yourself, if I'm kind of understanding this correctly.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think no matter what, this messy stuff that comes up that just can't get solved, or it's just hard to get solved, it's going to happen, right? I mean, and think about it like this, Pablo. The market is on fire right now, and it's on fire in Florida. I'm sure other states too. But a lot of investors, there are deals out there that, and check this out. You're going to love this. This is a great one for your audience.
Is there a name? Is there a name?
No,
We'll come up with a name at the end.
We'll come up with a vacant story.
The vacant story.
So I just saw an article, look it up. Just saw an article that Florida is like in the top 5 for most vacant homes. 1.6 million vacant properties out there. 1.6 million vacant properties in Florida. You're talking about I know. I see Jennifer's comment. It's huge. Look it up. And I mean, we could be talking about land.
That's the population of Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's a city. I mean, it's a metro. And think about, to me, where my brain has gone, where everything's happened in the last couple of years, is that I don't just see that as 1.6 million vacant properties. I see 1.6 million opportunities.
Yeah, you do.
And that's because so many of these could be vacant. They could be land. They could be people that moved away. They could be commercial. They could be situations going on that we don't know about. Mm-hmm. And people are going to need these services. People are going to need these abilities. If you want to buy property, so much competition. I think that somebody said there was like 3 homes and 40 buyers. It's like you want to start going over after the things that are a little bit harder to go after, but they actually may have more juice on it too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I got a name for you for that one. The Florida Ghost Town.
The intro.
You like that, right? All right. That is one. It's a whole city. It's a whole city of vacant properties is in Florida. And if you get the right, if you get the right teammates on your side to be able to like clear the hurdles of these vacant properties, now you have a significant upside, in your efforts of what you're doing, as opposed to just pounding the same pavement that has 30 people trying for the same thing, is kind of what you're saying, right?
It's crazy. I mean, there's so much opportunity out there, but you got to have the right people that can problem solve and come in on the situations. Because again, I mean, where are you going to find situations like buying out a third interest, or maybe even these complicated probates, a missing heir? You know how many people would pass off that situation if they knew that they couldn't get everybody because there was somebody missing? And we had that. I think so many people came across it, or the cooperation, or being able to tap into somebody and say, hey, we found you. Do you know about this? Here's what we could do to help on that situation.
Interesting, man. And I think now we're kind of like, we're in this like interesting strategies to find deals thing that you kind of teased, right? Like the ghost town is one of them. The missing heir is another one. What other interesting kind of like strategies are you seeing out there for this type of stuff?
The wild deed.
The wild deed.
So we found one. We got this down now. So there was a piece of property, and I'll give you the stats and crazy story about this later. But there was a piece of property that an investor found. They were doing driving for dollars, and the grass was tall, but it was habitable property. Went up to the property. He looked at the property appraiser. Went up to the property and knocked and said, "Are you so and so?" And they said, "No, we're tenants." He was like, "Oh, okay. Do you know where I can find this owner, her name?" And they were like, "She's not the owner of the property. It's this guy. You got to go reach out to him." He was like, "Guy?" Looks at the property appraiser like, "Okay." So he calls the guy, gets on the phone. They start getting into it a little bit, and then the guy hangs up. So the investor's like, something weird is going on here, like something strange. So he finds the lady's number. Skip trace, find the lady's number, calls her and says, ma'am, are you the owner to this property? She said, why, yes, I am. He said, are you interested in selling? She said, yeah, I think I don't want to have to deal with that property anymore and pay the taxes and all that. And he said, well, ma'am, are those your tenants? She goes, what tenants? He goes, all right, something weird's going on. Pulls title, sees everything come up. He goes, ma'am, just so you know, there's two tenants living in your property that you own, and you want to sell it. We got to figure out the story. She goes, that was my mom's property that I inherited about a year ago. What is going on? What are you talking about? He pulls the title. Title comes back and it says, deed, quit claim deed, warranty deed. And the last one said wild deed. We're like, what is a wild deed? This is like the concept that you hear in law school that never comes up in a scenario. And what it was a deed that was not in the proper chain of it was like A to B, B to C, C to X. It was like a random deed out there. And what we found out was the guy that hung up on the investor and another guy fraudulently prepared a deed, making it look like the lady's relative did a deed to them. They recorded it. They put it against the property. And so property recording office is, if it looks like a deed, it sounds like a deed, it tastes like a deed, it's a deed. So they record it's a deed. It's the wild deed. And they recorded the deed and nobody thought anything of it. And she was thinking, holy cow, what do we do here? So we had to file a lawsuit serving these people, these guys, to try to wipe the deed off so she gets title to the property. So we looked for him. We tried to find him. We went from Colorado to Missouri to Florida. Couldn't find the guy. 4 months later, we're at a hearing. All of a sudden, there's a lawyer. We're like, who is this guy? We couldn't find the guy. Couldn't find him anywhere. Found out he hired an attorney and he wanted nothing to do with this. He just wanted to let the lady get the property back and get the property sold. And we were thinking, oh, okay. Come to find out, there's a couple more properties that it happened to. And we picked up a second one. So, we see the crazy things. It was a random deed out there and it ended up being a fraudulently prepared deed. And we figured it out. We solved it, got the court order, sold the property. She got her money. And I just saw a story recently about how, and this came from underwriting, how fraudulent deeds and vacant properties are being targeted with these kinds of scenarios, and even crazy sellers that are doing this. And what they're looking for are vacant properties with no mortgage, and they're making it look like they're the seller to get the transaction sold. And I just heard a story from an underwriter that it just happened again, where it was a $10 million piece of property, vacant lot, and they were trying to sell it, making them look like they're the seller. So yeah, fraudulent vacant lots on the rise.
Unreal, dude. So in that scenario, does somebody face jail time? Did that dude that had the fraudulent deed face jail time, or did he get scammed?
Oh, I think he was charged. I think they were up for some kind of trial or some kind of thing that was going on. But yeah, I mean, I think it got to the point of criminal charges at a point.
Yeah, unbelievable, man. That's epic. Al, is this what the Al Nicoletti show is all about? Are you talking to people hanging out crazy deals and just talking stories like this all the time? Tell us about your show and what you guys talk about on your show, man.
Man, I love the Al Nicoletti show. So
I bet you do.
Oh man, I have a blast every episode. So I bring on a lot of real estate investors. It could be anybody in the title world, mortgage people, self-directed IRAs, a lot of people in the real estate world that help everybody level up their business in what they're doing personally or professionally. And I love bringing all these people on, and we have a great time. We talk about stories, things that they didn't know, things that they do know. And I love all the guests. I mean, it's crazy how it's morphed, Pablo, because you know how it's morphed. I mean,
I know exactly how it's morphed.
It's a live show. It's every Wednesday at 8 p.m. live. No limit, so we can go as long as needed. My longest one was 2 hours and 40 minutes, and my shortest one maybe 20 minutes. So, but yeah, check it out. It's on Spotify, iTunes, on YouTube, and check out all the micro content that's on Instagram at Attorney Nicoletti, and on Facebook. You can find me there. I love all the social media now.
When you go live on Facebook, right?
Go live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch.
Okay, so if you find Al Nicoletti, you're the Al Nicoletti. There's no other Al Nicoletti, right? If they look you up, they're gonna find Al's smiling face, a good story, and like a funny name for some kind of real estate transaction, right?
You're gonna find me. You look me up on Google, you'll see everything, right? That's all you gotta do. Go to Google and just like see everything that's there. Pablo, I heard something about branding. You're gonna love this. I heard something about branding the other day. That if you type in your name and you're everywhere on the first page, like everywhere, you've now owned the page. Like you've solidified your brand. Like if you could be on your name on Google where you got it there, it's worked. So check it out.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. I have the problem that my name is like the John Smith of people that have 6 kids and name all their kids after themselves, right? Like Pablo Gonzalez is a very, very widespread name in the world. So I have an issue with it. I find that you can find me if you search like iTunes or you search Spotify, my podcasts are going to show up in like the top 1, 2, or 3, which is like huge for me. But in Google, like it's got to be like Pablo Gonzalez community, Pablo Gonzalez networking. Like there's got to be like another word there so that you don't get the conquistador that settled like Lima, Peru or whatever. But that's just my problem, right? Another thing about branding, Al, if we're gonna go down this rabbit hole, as they're like telling me all this stuff, I'm like, yeah. So when you got a problem, better call Al. And I'm like, why aren't you making like, I could see so many like joke shirts of Better Call Al, like the Better Call Sal logo, like. If you got a probate, I'll solve it, right? Like a Vanilla Ice. Like you got so many plays on words that I think that would work really, really well for what you're doing.
I still want to see the shirt with the notorious POP. I still want to see that. You told me about that so long ago.
Somebody needs to do that. Yeah, you're right. I should have done that for you a while ago, bro. I've already been. Yeah. Okay. All right. Bet. We'll do that. We're gonna make a Biggie Small shirt out of you, man. Al, I appreciate you hanging out with us, man. I always enjoy any interaction that you and I have together. When it's also creating content, there's a special source of pride that comes from it, of just like being able to watch your entire meteoric rise. The day that you issue an Al Nicoletti NFT, I want to be the first buyer of it because I want to buy stock in Al Nicoletti. So, thanks for showing up. I couldn't, if you want to get educated on real estate and like hear deals and hear the other people that are doing it on the active side, or if you got a probate problem, or if you got a problem of any sort, Al is an absolute super connector that's going to find the right solution for you, man. So I appreciate you being on, brother.
Pablo, thank you again so much for having me on. Miss seeing Greg, love seeing you. Thank you to Madison and everybody out there. These things can be solved. I love working with investors. So if you come across those deals, I'm here. I love solving those things. We'll make sure we put all the contact info in there. This is what happens when you get 2 hosts on the show that go back and forth. It like never ends. So I love it. Thank you, Pablo. Really love it.
Dare I say that it was kind of convenient that Greg wasn't here, so he didn't get in the middle of this like bromance happening right now. I'm happy that everybody that came, hey, if you're out of the 37 folks that were with us today, I really appreciate you showing up, taking an hour of your day in the middle of a Tuesday to show up and listen to me and Al just storytell and give random names to stories is something that we never take for granted here. On Thursday, GC is still out, but we got Hervé Francois as the guest investor. Hervé, who was like the star of our fan appreciation show at the end of this year, last year. He's got a bunch of personality. He's got a great story. We're going to do a property of the week. We're going to get into his investment journey. It's going to be awesome. And until then, be more like Al. Don't be an average investor. See you next time.